50 feet below a garden in the heart of Berlin, there is an ordinary parking lot. It is entirely unremarkable, just gravel, a few weeds, and cars coming and going. But underneath that gravel, sealed in concrete and flooded with groundwater, lies the room where a world war ended. The world knows who died in that room. What almost nobody knows is the 80-year campaign by two different governments to erase the structure itself. The most notorious hideout of the 20th century was never preserved as a museum. Instead, authorities have spent decades keeping it a secret, hidden by a layer of ordinary gravel. The bunker was not designed for an apocalypse. In 1936, years before the first bomb fell on Berlin, workers dug a standard basement under the Reich Chancellery Garden, built to match the lavish aesthetic standards of the palace above. By 1944, a deeper structure was added, the Führerbunker. Despite stolen paintings lining its corridors, it was an engineering failure. The lowest floor sat below the water table, requiring constant pumping against floods, and the recycled air was incredibly stale. It sat 28 feet underground, protected from the artillery above by a concrete roof more than 3 meters thick. The massive effort required to keep the site dry and breathable meant that even before the war ended, the bunker had effectively become a pre-built, suffocating tomb. Hitler moved underground on January 16, 1945. Above him, the Red Army was rapidly tightening a noose around Berlin. He was not alone down there. Joseph and Magda Goebbels moved their family into the complex, bringing their 6 children to live and play in the subterranean corridors while the capital burned above them. One of the last people to see him alive was a 16-year-old messenger named Armin Lehmann. He watched as the dictator decayed into a sallow ghost, staring blankly ahead and ignoring the dirt shaken loose by nearby artillery strikes. After the war, American troops took Lehmann to witness a concentration camp firsthand. The boy who carried the Reich's final orders renounced his beliefs that same day, spending the rest of his life as a peace activist. Inside the bunker, the pressure bred extreme paranoia. When Hitler suspected Heinrich Himmler of negotiating a surrender, he retaliated by executing Himmler's liaison, a man who was also his own future brother-in-law. With the Russian army blocks away and his inner circle turning on itself, the concrete ceiling acted as a final barrier between the bunker and the real world. Inside, the leadership was left to manage a war that no longer existed. The end came quickly. After testing a cyanide capsule on his dog, Hitler committed suicide. His body was immediately carried to a shell crater in the garden above and burned with gasoline. Though the dictator was dead, the war he started continued to destroy the city above for another 8 days. In the immediate aftermath, Soviet and Western investigators toured the quiet wreckage, walking past the bloodstains still visible on the furniture. Then began the attempts to erase it. In 1947, Soviet forces packed the bunker with explosives, but the blast only managed to damage the interior walls. East Germany launched a second demolition campaign in 1959. The bunker survived because it sat within the highly restricted death strip of the Berlin Wall, a zone so dangerous that was remained untouched for decades. For 40 years, the Cold War kept the site sealed. Because the border was too dangerous to develop, the most infamous room in Berlin sat forgotten in the mud. It sat in the dark until 1988, when East German construction crews building new apartments accidentally cracked open the roof. They found a complex that was flooded, but astonishingly intact. The shallow Führerbunker still had its recognizable tiled walls and ventilation pipes. The government faced a problem. Leaving it open risked turning the site into a neo-Nazi pilgrimage destination, so they chose to pour wet concrete and dirt into the void, sealing it permanently. The reunified government treated the remaining concrete as a liability. They feared the structure would serve as a physical anchor for extremist ideology, so they chose to bury it rather than preserve it. Today, ordinary apartment buildings tower directly over the historical footprint. For years, the site was left totally unmarked. Germany finally compromised in 2006, installing a single, dryly factual information board to provide the history without creating a shrine. Even buried, the site still yields history. In 2025, scientists used DNA from a blood-stained sofa salvaged from the room to definitively match the blood to Hitler himself. The location leaves behind an unresolved debate.
Some view the erasure as the only way to deny a monster a monument. Others argue that hiding the physical evidence makes it easier to forget that these events actually happened. Ultimately, the history of this parking lot is defined by the weight of the earth pressing down on the past.